So another thing that I'd like to do is provide you with some resources. This is a book that my brother had. It's really popular. David Burns, Feeling Good. There's also a Feeling Good handbook that goes with it that you actually go through exercises and fill out the pages. And this is based on cognitive therapy, cognitive mood therapy, which is basically a recognizing of your thought habits and then a retraining of them. For example, it's basically based on self-talk, which we'll talk a lot about because the conversations we have in our heads are 95% of how we experience the world and are the sort of feeding grounds for depression. But I'll give you a couple examples. So in here we'll talk about black and white thinking, where a habit is to reduce everything to either black or white and lose track of the whole middle gray area, which is where most of reality lies. So that can lead to catastrophic thinking. So you go from A to Z in 30 seconds and you're like, oh crap, the world's coming to an end. This little thing just happened and now this domino effect's going to occur and everything's wrong and everything's bad. And there you go, boom, you're in the cycle of anxiety and frustration and you're off. Another example is, I'm trying to remember because it's been years since I've worked with cognitive therapy. All or nothing thinking. See here, it trains you to realize what your automatic thoughts are and then trains you to have a rational response because our reactions are everything. How we react to everything is what determines the outcome and how we'll feel. So the difficulty with cognitive therapy, for me at least, here, cognitive distortions, all or nothing thinking, overgeneralizing, mentally filtering things so that you focus on the negative and you choose to disregard any of the positive things that might be going on, disqualifying the positive, jumping to conclusions. Oh boy, I'm queen of that. Magnification or catastrophizing, emotional reasoning. This is the one I'm just about to talk about. This is the hardest thing with cognitive therapy, is assuming that your negative emotions reflect the way things really are. I feel it, therefore it must be true. And then should statements, which we all make. And if you start paying attention, you'll go, oh, wow, I do that. I should be doing this, or I should be doing that. And that immediately puts this weight on your shoulders of this, failing, not good enough, not doing it right. Labeling and mislabeling, personalizations. It's really, I really do highly recommend it. It, as you can see, we never spent much time in this book. Neither my brother nor I. My copy, I'm sure, when I had it, looked exactly the same, kind of pristine on the inside. The thing that makes this difficult is exactly what I was just about to describe to you, which is this sense that when you're in a negative cycle or thought process, it feels so real, it's very hard to talk yourself or rationalize your way out of it. It's hard to see a path when you're in a closed box, especially for people that love you, who don't experience this. Some people don't ever find themselves in boxes. My husband, I don't think he's ever found himself in a box without a door or a window in his life, and I envy it. But some of us are more prone to just finding ourselves in these boxes. And when you're in one, finding a door or an opening is really, really hard. And then trying to rationalize it and make it true that these thought patterns that you're engaging in aren't real, that they are irrational, is really hard, because when you feel like you're holding an orange, you swear it's an orange. And this retraining of the brain to recognize it as, no, this is a thought, not an orange, it's really difficult, but it's paramount to successfully dealing with depression and anxiety and pain, addiction. It's funny, I was doing a take, I was trying to, you're going to learn quickly that I'm a technological dinosaur. This is all really difficult for me to do. I have no intuitive, innate technological skills. So my editing of these videos is tragic, and yeah, I'm doing my best. But in an earlier clip, I was talking about the very difficulty inherent in cognitive therapy. And I was flipping through and I was like, oh, wow, it's soiled and it's definitely kicked around a lot, but you can tell this book has not been, really read and invested in, And then I came to this back page, and it's my brother's writing, and it says, something don't have to be there. Jump start the car. Give it 20, then see start. And I think that Mitchell was very mechanical. He was very able to rig things up in his own way and make things work that my brain is like, what? And he could work on his own cars and do things to them and trick them out with little things. And so I think that he's using an analogy with a car here, but like here, wrapping myself around the axle. And certainly that's, what it's like when you've got depression and lots of forms of mental illnesses. You feel like you're spinning in a hamster wheel, or like you're wrapping yourself around something and just getting spun tighter and tighter and round, round, round. And here somebody is obviously telling him, and he's taking notes, that he should be keeping a daily mood log. He would never do this. This would be just way too laborious. Daily mood log. This is where you chart how you're feeling on a day-to-day basis and you try to figure out the patterns. Like right now, I'll have 5 good days, I'm down for 5 days. 5 good days, I'm down. And I'm trying to figure out what's triggering the 5 bad days. Is there a common denominator that seems to occur around that time? But this is the main thing that I thought was profound in his little note-taking. At the very moment that I'm complaining about how difficult this work is and how laborious it is, he says, sometimes we have to tolerate the project, I think is what it said. No, the process. Sometimes we have to tolerate the process. And I'm super intolerant. I want, let's fix it, let's move on, and that is not how this works. A lot of doctors right now are prescribing antidepressants to people who really have no need for them. It's a quick, easy fix. Mood elevator. There's a lot more that you can do in recognizing your thought patterns. Okay, so this is one option. Highly recommend it. Depends on the way you think. Could be the perfect fit for you. Definitely got clear-cut exercises that you can do where you feel like you're making some progress and working towards a goal. Okay. Didn't really work for me, although it's not entirely true, because I do try to recognize the irrationality of my thoughts and say, okay, what am I doing right now? Okay, I'm black and white thinking. What do I need to do to adjust that? Okay. This is my favorite book and you can see here in comparison to that one, we have a book where I've really marked it up quite a bit. Although that doesn't really look like it, does it? I guess I have sections that I like. I've reread this book probably 10 times, and I go to it on a regular basis. This is Radical Acceptance by Tara Brach. She's a psychologist. She is Buddhist. Don't let that scare you. You can be Christian and read this book. It's not a religion. It's not a cult. It is based in mindfulness, which is a super popular term right now. It's all over the place. It's the buzzword on all the magazines. What it is being present, truly present in a given moment. And I'll tell you how I was introduced to it. I went to a therapist who was a psychologist, and she was super into mindfulness work. And what she did is we were talking. And she left the room and came back and handed me a raisin. Said, here, put this in your mouth. Okay, so I put it in my mouth. And she said, now describe it to me and really feel it. Feel the texture of this raisin in your mouth in a way that you've never taken the time to truly feel a raisin before. So for a good 2 minutes, she had me just feel the sensations, the roughness, the caverns, the smoothness, the softness of this raisin in my mouth. Just for the feel of it. Okay, now describe the way it tastes without having yet bitten into it. What does that taste like? And so for about 5 minutes, all we did was focus in on this raisin. And then finally it was, okay, take a bite. Now, what's that experience like? That's a really simplified example of what mindfulness is. You can practice it anytime, anywhere. It's just a stopping of whatever you're doing and a focusing in on whatever you're doing. Because 90% of the time when we're doing stuff, our brains are doing something else. We're 10 minutes in the future. We're a month in the future. We're a year in the past. We're everywhere but where we are. So if you say, I'm going to start tonight practicing mindfulness as I do the dishes. And what that's going to look like is, instead of scrubbing the dishes and doing the dishes and thinking about what you're going to do when you're done with the dishes, you really concentrate on feeling the weight of the pan in your hand, feeling the texture, the hardness, the coldness, the water, the temperature. Focus on that bottle of soap and the scrubby, and it's a forced, directed attention into the present that with enough repetition and practice becomes sort of seamless, and it flows. And it's a lot more effortless than it is in the beginning. You know, it's really feeling the chair you're sitting in, listening to the person you're talking to. And it's a constant reset, because even if you've been practicing mindfulness for years and years and years, there isn't this point where suddenly you just do it all the time. You know, inner self-talk and chatter is inherent in the human brain. It's part of being a human being, and you can't avoid it or shut it down. But it's recognizing it, noticing the waves and the feelings that are coming in. And the biggest key to mindfulness is allowing things to be as they are. We definitely live in a culture where negative feelings and emotions are to be avoided, run from, anesthetized with medication, alcohol, chocolate, not allowed. And that's not realistic. These things, these flows of negativity and uncomfortable feelings are part of the experience of being a human being. So with mindfulness, you sort of sit back and say, okay, this doesn't feel too good. This is uncomfortable. I'd like it to stop, but I'm going to let it have its space. Okay, I'm going to let this feeling come. It's going to take up, what does it feel like? Where am I feeling it? Okay, I feel it in my stomach. It kind of feels like nausea, or I feel a tightness in my chest, and I don't, but instead of fleeing from it, let it have its space. And miraculously, with practice and over time, you'll recognize that even these really uncomfortable negative feelings, they're like waves. They start to dissipate on their own. And before you know it, you're like, oh, okay, wait, it's kind of going away. Oh, wow, I made it through that wave. That wasn't so bad. Instead of running from it and fleeing from it and turning it into this big tsunami that you've got to avoid, you learn to sort of ride the waves and become one with the experience rather than trying to conquer it or avoid it. This book is all about that. And she starts, it's beautiful. It starts with, something is wrong with me. This is the jumping off point for probably 95% of human ailments. I am separate. I am alone. I am not okay. And then you're off on the merry-go-round of comparisons and the tsunami of that leads to depression and unfortunately for some people a kind of hopelessness which causes them to take their own lives. I highly recommend this book. Now, along with this book, if you go to, and again, I'm a technological dinosaur. I don't know how yet to add links and all that. I can't even send an attachment via email, and I just graduated from a flip phone. So, I don't know if these are all capitalized or not, but you'll find it. TaraBrach.com. She has these Dharma talks that I tried and tried and tried to get my brother to listen to. Oh my goodness. I think every time we talked, I was like, go listen to a Tara Brach Dharma talk. Go listen. I don't think he ever did. Yes, she has that kind of NPR, very relaxed, exactly what you would think a Buddhist psychologist would sound like. Her content is awesome. She's got really funny jokes that she tells. And I have been listening to these Dharma talks for years. And I got to say, this is the single tool that pulls me through and makes me feel not separate, not alone, and okay. Oh, I just squashed a bug, I think. Oh, I hate that. So these are some tools. These are two, first introductions to things. Give it a shot. Go to tarabrach.com. If I can get